vez que hayamos contaminado el último río, talado el último árbol y pescado el último pez, recién ahí nos daremos cuenta de que no podemos comer dinero. ¿Cómo va? Estamos acá filmando una cosita. I like to think that I'm more than just a visual artist, but it's hard to separate from that because it's what I do every day and it comes from me. It's, I'm like the mother of that work. But I like to think that I'm more than that also. But it does become a way of life and a definition of who you are after a few years, I think. Very meticulous and obsessive with my work. When I do something, I go right into it until the last consequences. When I was like 3 years old, my parents would tell me that I would stay for hours on end, drawing like full sheets of different dots of different colors, and I would complete this pattern, and they were like, this girl is possessed, because I would stay for hours. You know how children don't have like that much of a focus, or like they have a short attention span. And I would be like for hours doing all these compositions of dots. But obviously I wasn't creating art. I wasn't even aware of what I was doing. It's just following like this blind impulse. Correct. I think Buenos Aires is quite a creative city. So I think I had it inside of me and I was in the right place for it to grow. It's also a place where, since conditions are changing all the time and there's so much like instability, people are always finding like very creative ways. Like we're pushed to live in a creative way where you have always to be changing the way that you work or the way, that you move around basically. One day there's no subway, when there's no bus. One day they raise taxes for this, so people need to do something else. Like, I think it's very dynamic and very changing, and that gives Argentinians sort of like a sharpness to move around and change things and do things new and different ways. This is one of the artists that inspired me when I was very young, Jorge de la Vega. He doesn't do collage, but he mixes his paint with fabrics. He has to do something with Berni also, the Argentinian artist. And this is his latest work, which has nothing to do with the other. I was doing sort of artwork with materials that I found at home when I was 16, and I didn't think I was going to be an artist. I knew I would keep on doing it, but I never thought it would become my profession, to be honest. And I thought I would have, a furniture store and a gallery or something like that, or be a furniture designer or some kind of industrial designer. Like, I knew I wanted to do something creative, but I wasn't sure exactly what shape it would take. But I had a bit of like pressure to do something more conservative, or like even in South America, like where the economic circumstances are like super chaotic, everyone was like, no, you should do something a bit more like secure. So I studied economics, and I ended up being super inspired by what I learned in university. And also I thought how universities, when they teach economics, they teach capitalistic economics, but they don't teach any other model. I had 4 years of economics and they didn't even mention socialism or communism or even like gift economy or barter economy. Like, it was very focused on the system we have today, and it wasn't critical of the economic system. The next one. At one point, I started building bridges between the economic theory that I had studied and my practice, like all the materials that I was working that were discarded things, parts of a collapsed system that doesn't work anymore because it has so many things, and questioning the basic pillars of the economic system. For example, our current economy assumes that everyone will always want more, and then on the other hand, nations need to grow their GDP infinitely, where the size of the planet is not increasing and the resources are not increasing, so nothing in nature grows indefinitely. And it's also about the production processes of the things that we buy, that sometimes they look like super glamorous and happy and perfect, and then if you turn it around, on the back of it, there's all the damage to the ecosystem, the bad salaries for the people who make them, the unnecessary waste that they generate once people dispose of them, the invasion of advertising in the streets of all those products, like the visual contamination, right? What's the business behind selling trash in various formats, you know? Our existence on Earth goes by like super fast, and it doesn't make any sense to be like accumulating as if we were like Egyptians, you know, how Egyptians used to be buried as if they would live on forever and they would need all their material things. And I like to think that we're living as if we were Egyptians because people are very ambitious and trying to get a lot of material ownership. You know, this Buddhist theories of desires that they just like come and go, so you don't have to follow each of them. I think that's really relieving in a way. First, it was too scary to like completely drop my previous career to start a new one. So what I said to myself was like, okay, I'm gonna try for 6 months to be a full-time artist and see how it goes. And if it goes completely wrong, or I hate it, or I feel lonely, or whatever, I just can go back to my previous life. I always say that I entered the art world through the window, like not through the main door, because I didn't do like the bachelor's degree in art or a master's in art or whatever. I just tried to figure out my way of doing art. The first doors that started to open wasn't because I could say anything to justify my work. I think it was just giving a lot of energy, time, love to what I was doing and hoping that the artwork itself, that would be what opens the doors for me. But when I first entered like the art world and started exhibiting at like big fairs or whatever, I was very young and I had this idea in my mind that the art world was the most free place in the world where you could be completely free. And I realized it has so many rules and so many like do's and don'ts, and I was like super confused, and I also felt like very vulnerable because it's fun to talk about art and which you like, which you don't, why, what's good, what's not, is it art, is it not. It's a super fun conversation. I have it all the time. But when you're like in like one of the subjects of that conversation, it can be super painful. Even you don't listen to people talking about your art, but you can feel it. And I remember at one point, after one of those big exhibitions, I told my mentor, I don't think I want to do this anymore, or I just want to do art and keep it for myself. I don't know if I'm ready to show it with the world and receive all the feedback that it wants to give me. But I think the urge to create and share was always super strong, and it always won. Like even though I did have these downs, I kept on like growing and creating even more. Then there's always the typical obstacle of financial insecurity when you're an artist and you live of that, like your income is like this. But I managed to do that quite easily in terms of like being super austere. I don't buy many things, and when I sell a work, I save a lot, so I don't need to worry too much about that. And it's also about trusting your instincts that like things will work out. And working with economics and business was a bit more predictable. Like I would know what I would be doing in a couple of years, or how much I would be making or whatever. And with the art world, it's like complete uncertainty, and it was so vast. Like you could do anything, absolutely anything, vast and infinite, because you can keep changing and keep growing. There is not an end. There's not a Like, okay, I've made it, I've done this, I'm done. I think that was very attractive, the never-endingness.